The silence in the archives. The galaxy had long forgotten humanity. For centuries, their name existed only in scattered mentions, half-corrupted records of wars, ruins, and a species that burned too brightly before vanishing. To the archivists of the Concordium, Earth was a closed chapter. Their libraries described humankind as a reckless people who reached too far and collapsed into silence. Among the younger species, the story of Earth was a cautionary tale. Ambition untempered by patience leads only to ruin. At military academies, cadets scoffed when ancient maps showed the Sol system. At diplomatic councils, the thought of humanity rising again drew laughter. No signals. No colonies. No fleets. For half a millennium, Earth had been quiet, as though buried beneath the dust of time. The galaxy was certain, humanity was finished. Whispers among the stars. Then came the first anomaly. In the Luri sector, a patrol frigate picked up static where there should have been nothing, a signal buried beneath radiation storms. At first, the officers dismissed it as stellar interference, but the static repeated, a pattern, a code that none of their archives could decipher. Days later, another anomaly emerged near a forgotten asteroid belt, echoes of metal, dense and ordered, hidden among the rocks. When scans deepened, outlines appeared, structures, vast rings of iron, halls and hangars frozen in silence. The Concordium High Council convened. Admirals reviewed the images and laughed. Ruins, they said, the bones of Earth's ambition. Scholars nodded, old debris, nothing more. Yet a thread of unease spread among them. If these were ruins, why did their system still hum faintly, as if dreaming? The graveyard of iron. Explorers were dispatched. Their ships drifted into a region long avoided, the Perseid Drift, a labyrinth of dust clouds and magnetic storms. There, hidden in silence, they found it. A shipyard. It stretched across the void like the skeleton of a forgotten god. Miles of scaffold and gantry, half shrouded in rock and shadow. Warships, their hulls scarred but intact, hung suspended in stillness. Hundreds of them, thousands perhaps. The graveyard was not scattered wreckage, it was ordered, waiting. The explorers transmitted their findings. Scholars called it fascinating. Admirals dismissed it as relics unworthy of fear. But the youngest officers, those with less certainty in their voices, whispered. If these ships once belonged to humanity, why are they still here? Why were they hidden, not destroyed? The first spark. The answer came with a vibration. On the third survey, as drones entered one of the larger vessels, the silent halls groaned. Ancient conduits flared with ghostly light. Energy, deep and buried, surged through dormant veins. Engines that should have been dust, roared. Codes centuries old pulsed through the void, and the galaxy watched in horror as the graveyard began to move. One ship's lights flickered, then another, then entire rows of titanic hulls. Their command codes, still valid, still sharp, pierced every comm system like thunder from the past. The explorers fled. Their last transmission trembled with disbelief. The Terran fleet, it's alive. Awakening the storm. Silence broke with fire. The forgotten warships stirred as if waking from a dream. Engines that had not burned for 500 years ignited in defiance of time. Hulls reconfigured, shields shimmered, weapons aligned with terrifying precision. There was no hesitation, no confusion. The fleet's coordination was flawless, as though the captains had only closed their eyes yesterday. Ancient AI cores relayed orders, formation grids locked into place. Entire squadrons moved like a single living organism, casting shadows across the stars. To the Concordium fleets observing from a distance, it was as if ghosts had risen, clothed in steel and flame. Their instruments screamed, power outputs exceeding anything in modern records, maneuvers executed with mathematical perfection. The dead had come back. Panic among the living. Concordium admirals scrambled ships to contain the awakening. They believed modern technology would overwhelm rusted relics. They believed centuries of advancement had left humanity far behind. They were wrong. When the first confrontation came, the Terran vessels moved with terrifying elegance. A Concordium cruiser launched a barrage of torpedoes. The human warship rotated smoothly, armor refracting energy like water over stone. Its response was swift, a single broadside of kinetic lances. The cruiser tore apart in silence before the scream of its crew could even reach command. Panic spread, Concordium formations broke, their captains shouted in disbelief. These ships are not relics, they are predators. Roar of the forgotten. The fleet expanded like fire through dry brush. One by one, dormant vessels roared awake. Their hull markings, long erased by dust, burned bright with Terran insignias. Names once whispered in legends became visible again. Resolute, Iron Dawn, Revenant, Voice of Earth. And then the colossal dreadnoughts stirred, behemoths the size of cities, each carrying firepower enough to unmake worlds. Their awakening was not just mechanical, it was ritual, a storm rehearsed and preserved for centuries. The galaxy had called humanity extinct, but here was proof. Humans did not merely build fleets. They buried thunder beneath the stars and left it waiting. The sky burns. The climax came at Rho Lyre, where the Concordium assembled its largest defense in millennia. Hundreds of ships, elite admirals, confidence that they could quell the rising storm. But when the Terran armada arrived, the sky itself darkened. Engines ignited with a roar that drowned calm channels in static. Hulls glowed as ancient weapons lit the void. Every maneuver struck with surgical precision, a dance of annihilation. Concordium fleets fell in waves, cruisers shattered, carriers ignited. Battleships were torn apart like paper. The Terran formations never broke, never faltered. They fought not as survivors but as conquerors awakened mid-stride. The galaxy watched breathless as silence became fire. The dreaded question. When the battle was over, only wreckage remained. The Terran fleet moved on, engines burning, leaving no signal of peace or explanation. They did not parley. They did not warn. They simply demonstrated readiness. Around the galaxy, fear spread like plague. Councils whispered questions in hushed tones. If this is what humanity forgot, what have they remembered? If this was their hidden arsenal, what greater storms lie waiting in the dark? For the first time in centuries, the name of Earth was not a relic. It was a warning. Epilogue: from dust to fire. Humanity had been silent, buried, dismissed. But silence is not absence, it is patience. Dust is not decay, it is the veil before fire. The galaxy now understood. Humans do not abandon what they build. They preserve it. They bury fleets in the dark, ready for the day they are needed. From dust to fire, the forgotten had roared back alive. And across the stars, dread whispered in every council chamber. If this was only their graveyard, then somewhere, waiting, lies their true armory. To the galaxy scholars, humanity was an afterthought. In the great archives of the Zir conquered, the files on Terra were brief and unimpressive. Once, millennia ago, A minor species had emerged on a pale blue world at the edge of a small spiral arm. They fought, they expanded, they burned their skis with wars, and then, as the records claimed, they vanished. The consensus was unanimous. Humanity was extinct or close enough. No colonies were active. No signals crossed the void. No ambassadors ever arrived at the conquered halls. In hushed tones, aliens joked that humans had been too reckless to survive the ages. Their silence was taken as proof of weakness. The Terrans were written off, forgotten, and left to dust. The galaxy moved on. New powers rose. New fleets dominated the trade lanes. And Terra's name became little more than a curiosity, an old myth in the annals of dead civilizations. Whispers from the graveyard. It began with static. The Zir long-range listening posts at the rim detected faint, broken pulses echoing across the void. At first, the analysts dismissed it. Old signals drift through space all the time, reflections of dead beacons, collapsing stars, fractured transmissions warped by gravity wells. But then the signals repeated. Patterns emerged, bursts of encryption older than most living species, binary rhythms layered in human cadence. A research vessel was dispatched, crewed more for curiosity than caution. They traced the signals to a forgotten sector, dusty, cold, marked in the records as Terra Expanse, dead zone. There, hidden among the asteroid clouds, they found it, a structure. Massive, sprawling, half-consumed by drifting debris. A shipyard, or rather, the graveyard of one. Columns of skeletal frames hung in the void. Hulks of battleships half-rusted, silent. Colossal drydocks drifting dark, their spines broken. Ruins, the Zir commander declared with certainty. But his sensors disagreed. The derelicts hummed. The uneasy realization. At first, the readings were faint. Power signatures flickered like candlelight. Radiation levels rose and fell in steady pulses. It could have been residual decay, the slow death of reactors long past their prime. But then came the heat. Infrared scans lit up across the fleet's sensors. Metal long frozen in space began to warm, glowing red like coals in a buried fire. The great skeletal warships, thought to be corpses,